All right, so are you ready for a deep dive?
Always. What are we diving into today?
Well, get ready to dust off those dictionaries and maybe shine a light on some linguistic treasures.
Oh,
Because today's deep dive takes us straight into the heart of, well, a vintage Portuguese grammar book.
you're kidding. Those old things.
That's right. We're
Yeah.
talking like a real blast from the past here.
Okay, I'm intrigued, I gotta admit.
It's called, get this, Manual Compacto de Gramatica da Língua Portuguesa, straight out of the 1960s.
Wow, like a time capsule of language learning then.
Exactly. And, it's got that awesomely retro cover design, bold fonts and colors, the kind of...
Yeah, like I taught your grandpa Portuguese.
Exactly. And while it might not sound like, the most thrilling beach read,
Right.
trust me, we're about to uncover some absolute gems hidden within these pages.
I do love a good treasure hunt. All right, lay it on me.
You see, even in the age of Duolingo and instant translations and all that,
Yeah.
these old school grammar books, they hold a certain magic, I think.
I'm listening.
They offer this fascinating glimpse into how language was used, how it was viewed, but in a totally different era.
Right, like it's not just about the grammar rules, it's reflecting a whole social and cultural context.
Exactly. And that, my friend, is where the real deep dive begins.
Okay, I'm hooked. So what jumped out at you first from this treasure trove of linguistic knowledge?
Okay, so one of the first things that honestly made me laugh out loud was a section on, get this, historical slang.
No way.
I'm serious. Apparently, back in 1960s Brazil, if someone called you bocomoco,
Bocomoca. Okay, I have no idea what that means.
well, we'll just say you weren't exactly winning any popularity contests.
So like the go-to put down.
Exactly. Bocomoco, someone lacking social graces.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what will our slang from today sound like in 50 years?
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like today's clueless or awkward, right?
Yeah.
But it gives us this amazing insight into how language evolves alongside culture.
Totally.
What was considered a cutting insult back then might just earn you a confused look today.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what do our slang words today say about our society compared to back then?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain, like, ghosting someone to someone in the 1960s.
They'd be like, wait, you mean like a ghost?
Exactly. Okay, speaking of how we use language differently in different situations, this book has this whole section on gíria, basically Portuguese for slang, and how to use it appropriately.
Oh, that's important. So not just knowing the words, but like the whole code switching thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Code switching is huge, right? It's about adapting how you speak depending on who you're talking to.
Right. Like you wouldn't use the same slang with your grandma that you would with your friends, hopefully.
Hopefully not. And the book actually gives this great example of rephrasing the same sentence for different audiences.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff. Give me an example.
Okay, so they have, it's obviously messed up because they skipped the meeting,
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
versus they were unable to fully comprehend the matter because they were absent from the meeting.
Wow, same message, totally different vibe.
Right.
It all boils down to social dynamics, right? Like we instinctively adjust our language to fit in, to build rapport, maybe even establish a little authority.
Totally. Okay, so brace yourselves because now we're diving into one of my favorite parts, the pronunciation quirks.
Bring it on. I'm ready for anything.
So this book has a whole section dedicated to orthophonia, essentially, correct pronunciation.
Oh, I like it already.
It dives into those words that even native Portuguese speakers might pronounce a little differently depending on where they're from.
Oh, yeah, that's common in so many languages, these regional variations.
For sure. And before anyone starts correcting their accents or anything, we're not talking about mistakes here.
Right, more like those little quirks.
Exactly. Those charming little quirks that make language so lively.
It's what gives it personality.
For sure. It's like how folks in different parts of the U.S. might say caramel totally differently,
Oh, yeah.
but it's still delicious caramel, right?
It's a good reminder, I think, that language is always evolving, even within a single country,
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just pronunciation either. These regional variations can even pop up in grammar rules.
Oh, tell me about it.
Remember when we were wrestling with when to use mill race versus just mill raise?
Oh, yeah.
I swear those little grammar quirks can really trip you up.
Absolutely. It's those subtle differences that native speakers often don't even realize they're doing,
Right.
but can make all the difference for someone learning the language.
Which is why this book is so great, honestly. It lays out those why moments so clearly.
Yeah.
Even with grammar rules, it's like it knew exactly what would confuse us non-native speakers decades later.
Totally.
Like with the Mil Reyes thing, suddenly it clicked. You wouldn't say 1,000 reis in Portuguese, just 1,000 reis.
Interesting.
Simple, but kind of mind-blowing when you're first learning.
It's about understanding the underlying logic of the language.
Yes.
Not just memorizing phrases.
Exactly. And speaking of understanding, this is where things get really cool for all you word nerds out there like me.
Aha, always.
This book, it's full of these little etymology snippets.
Oh, nice.
Like these fascinating glimpses into where words come from, you know.
The etymology of a word can be so revealing.
They even break down the origin of orthographia itself.
Which is?
Which is Portuguese for orthography, you know, the whole correct spelling thing.
Right.
Turns out it comes from the Greek words for correct and writing.
Makes sense.
Right. Makes total sense. But it just shows you how much history is packed into even the simplest words we use every day.
It highlights the influence of classical languages, too, on Portuguese and a lot of other European languages, too, of course.
Oh, sure.
It's like this linguistic family tree, you know, where you can trace words back to their roots.
I love that. It's like having a secret decoder ring for language.
I like that.
And honestly, understanding where words come from, it makes them stick in your brain so much better, don't you think?
Absolutely. It adds a whole other layer of meaning for sure.
It's like a story, not just some random sound.
Totally. And sometimes those etymological stories, they can be surprisingly entertaining.
Oh, I know. Speaking of entertaining, this next section had me hooked.
Oh.
You know how some words in Portuguese sound deceptively similar to French words?
Oh, yeah, the false friends, right?
The false friends. Talk about a recipe for awkward misunderstandings.
Right. Like being in a bakery and asking for a baton, thinking you're getting a baguette.
Right.
But you end up with a drumstick.
Wait, baton means drumstick in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, that is hilarious.
It just shows how languages borrow and adapt words, but the meanings don't always translate directly.
It's like a linguistic game of telephone.
Exactly.
So we've unearthed some awesome slang, deciphered some grammar mysteries, even dodged some potential faux pas.
Not bad for a day's work.
I know, right? But how do we make all this knowledge actually stick, you know? It can't just be about highlighting passages in a book.
That's the real challenge of learning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Taking information and making it truly meaningful.
Right. It has to mean something.
And this is where the book surprised me again, actually.
It wasn't just about, dry explanations and rules and stuff.
Exactly right. It used stories, examples, things that really brought the language to life a little more.
Like there's this one fable they use about the lobo, the wolf, and the ciganja, which is a stork.
Okay.
And I gotta say, it really stuck with me, even just as a story.
They're smart to do that, though, right? Because our brains latch on to those narratives.
Totally. So the wolf, he gets a bone stuck in his throat, right?
Ouch.
And the stork, being all graceful and kind, helps him out. But what does the wolf do?
Let me guess. Gobbles up the stork, too.
No. But almost as bad. Right. Yeah. No thank you, no reward, nothing. Just back to being a grumpy wolf.
Oh, classic wolf move, right? But I see what you mean. Even in a grammar book, you find these little life lessons tucked in there.
Right. And honestly, for me, beyond the stories, it was the word formation stuff that honestly blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. Like,
how they break down how prefixes and suffixes work, all that.
The building blocks of language.
Exactly. The book uses pensero as an example, basically meaning like thinker.
Okay.
And it shows you how it's built from these simpler parts.
Right. So you're not just memorizing the word in isolation, but you're like, now I see how it's put together.
Yes. It's like suddenly you can see the secret code of the language or something.
Totally. It makes you a more active learner, more able to decipher new words and actually grasp their meaning instead of just kind of going, okay, I guess that's what that means.
Exactly. It's like you said earlier, it's not just about the what of language, but the WHY. And this book, even though it's from a totally different time, it nails that.
It really does. I mean, honestly, it's been such a fun journey exploring it with you.
Right back at you. Who knew that a dusty old grammar book could be this captivating, right?
I know, right? I kind of want to find some old English textbooks now, see what they were talking about back in the day.
Right. It's like we time travel back to the 1960s, uncovered some linguistic secrets, maybe even learned a life lesson or two from a wolf and a stork.
Don't trust wolves.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, we've thrown a lot your way today. Slang from another era, those tricky false friends, even a bit of grammar. But the real takeaway. Language is way more than just rules on a page.
It's a reflection of who we are, how we connect, how we make sense of the world.
Exactly. So next time you hear a new slang word, or maybe misinterpret something because of a false friend, Don't just brush it off. Think about it.
Yeah, be curious.
Think about how language is always changing, always adapted.
Because that's where the real fun begins, right?
Exactly. When you start paying attention, you realize that language is alive, it's dynamic, and it is full of surprises.
Yeah.
Just like this amazing deep dive.